Have you ever noticed how some people just light up a conversation with a single question? Yeah, that wasn't me at first. I used to ask safe, predictable questions like, "How was your weekend?" and get safe, predictable answers like, "Fine." Boom, end of the conversation. Then, one morning, completely by accident, I asked my manager, "What's one thing you're excited about this week?" And his eyes lit up. Suddenly, we were talking about his son's upcoming soccer match, his new project, real stuff. And the rest of the week, every time we passed in the hallway, he'd give me updates. And that's when I realized that good questions aren't just about getting information. They're about creating genuine connections. And tying a bow tie is the same. A little adjustment, a little twist, and it all comes together. Ask the right questions, and suddenly you're not just talking, you're connecting. Stick around, because today we're exploring how to ask the kind of questions that make conversations come alive. And if you've got a favorite question you love to ask, or if you've got one, or if you have one that you've always struggled to phrase, drop it in the chat, and I'll answer a few live at the end of the show. All right. Oh, hi, Gabriella. I see you there in the chat. All right, let me tell you about Nadia. Nadia moved to Singapore for work. She was smart, she was qualified, great at English, but after 6 months she said, "I feel invisible in the office. Nobody opens up to me." So we looked at her questions, and most of them were yes/no questions. Did you finish the task? Are we on schedule? Is this okay? Nothing wrong with those questions, but they don't invite conversation. So we worked on one thing, asking better questions. Open-ended, thoughtful, curious. And 3 weeks later, her manager said, "Wow, Nadia, you've really stepped it up as a leader." Why? Because better questions don't just get answers. They make people feel seen. So, all right, we're going to break it down. Remember, Nadia, she wasn't lacking language skills. She just wasn't asking questions that opened doors. Once she started asking better questions, everything started to change. So if you want to sound more confident, more fluent, and connected in English, the secret isn't in speaking more, it's in asking better. So we're going to cover 4 types of questions that can change everything. We'll start with open-ended questions. So remember, when Nadia first came to me, she was frustrated by short, abrupt conversations at work. She felt like every interaction quickly hit a dead end. So we looked closely into how she was phrasing her questions. And again, most of them were yes or no types, simple and straightforward, but not conversation starters. So I told her to start with an experiment of using open-ended questions. So instead of asking a colleague, "Did you finish it?" she started asking, "What's the status of the project?" And how about this? What kind of challenges have you faced while working on it? Good open-ended questions. Her coworkers suddenly opened up and shared a lot more detailed insights and even mentioned things that she hadn't thought about before. So she noticed how these small changes transformed all of her interactions. People began approaching her proactively, seeing her not just as someone who was checking the boxes, but now she was someone who was genuinely interested in their experiences. And why does this matter? It matters because open-ended questions give people the space to share more. They show that you are genuinely interested and that you care, and that makes you sound more thoughtful and approachable and engaged. So when she first tried open-ended questions, she was excited about the improved responses, but sometimes the conversation still felt incomplete or they ended sooner than she'd hoped. So I got her introduced to the concept of follow-up questions. Excuse me. Instead of just nodding along politely when her coworkers briefly described a challenging situation, Nadia learned to lean in and ask more. Can you tell me more about what happened there? Or what exactly do you mean by that? She also discovered how powerful a simple, curious question like, how did things turn out in the end, could actually be. And almost immediately, her conversations grew deeper. Her coworkers started providing more context, sharing personal insights, and genuinely appreciated that they started to view her as someone who really listened and cared and valued their input. So follow-up questions, those are your superpower. They really show genuine engagement and help conversations flow naturally. And here's a pro tip. Keep a small list of 2 or 3 of your favorite follow-up phrases handy, and you'll find conversations becoming richer and more meaningful every day. So, when Nadia became comfortable asking follow-up questions, she noticed another layer of communication was still missing: real emotional connection. So she told me she often felt like she understood her coworkers' tasks, but not their feelings. So that's when we explored empathy questions. I'll get myself in where you can read it. So instead of just asking about work tasks, she gently asked, well, how did you feel about what happened in the meeting? And her colleagues would open up and share their frustrations or their worries, and the conversations inevitably turned deeper and built bigger trust with her and made some stronger professional relationships. So empathy questions like, was that a tough decision for you? Or what would have made that easier? It helped her build connections beyond just the surface level. And they showed her colleagues that she really does care. Yeah, it's really important. Empathy is not just about being polite. It creates lasting, genuine relationships. Now, by the time Nadia was starting to lead meetings, she became confident and really good with open-ended and empathy questions and follow-up questions, but she wanted her team to feel like they were collaborators and not just responders. So we started moving in with more perspective-based questions. Questions that invite someone to offer their point of view, not just data or status updates. So in one meeting, a decision needed to be made about project timelines. Tension was building. Instead of giving her own opinion right away, Nadia asked her teammates, how do you see this affecting your department? And what might we be missing here? And the room shifted because someone eventually raised a concern that nobody had thought of. And another person built on that idea. And by the end, they had a stronger plan, and everyone felt heard. So perspective questions such as, what's your take on this? Or how do you see it from your side? Or what might we be overlooking? They're not just conversation tools, they're leadership tools. They show that you respect others and value their opinion and working together. And it makes you sound like a natural leader. So, what is the secret formula here? It's simple. Curiosity plus clarity equals great questions. So, before you speak, ask yourself, is my question clear? Is it inviting? Is it short enough to understand, but deep enough to matter? And here's the good news. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be curious and intentional. So, try this. In your next conversation, change one closed question into an open one. Just one. Then wait. Watch how people respond. Maybe they smile. Maybe they lean in. Maybe they tell you something real. And when they do, that's the moment you'll know you didn't just ask a question, you made a connection. Give it a shot. You've got this. And hey, if anything from today's episode sparked a question or made you think, drop it in the chat. I will be answering a few questions right after the Mastery Minute, so stick around for that. And your challenge for this week, take one of today's question types and use it today or Monday in a meeting, in a coffee chat, or even in a phone call. Watch what happens when you ask to understand and not just respond. And if this helped you, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who wants to improve their English conversation skills. And you can check out the full article at the link in the description or at allaboutenglishmastery.com. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter. Okay, it's everybody's favorite time of the day, the Mastery Minute. And today, I have an idiom. Have you ever heard someone say that they opened a can of worms? Well, let me tell you a story about Elena. She was leading a team feedback session, wanting to spark real dialogue. And she asked, "What's one thing we're not doing well as a team?" And the floodgates opened. Complaints and tensions, old frustrations, it all came pouring out. Now, to open a can of worms means to bring up a topic that leads to complicated or messy discussions. Now, the idiom likely comes from fishing. Cans of live bait, often worms, were used by fishermen, and once they opened, the worms would wiggle out everywhere, making a mess. So it's the same idea here. Some questions, once asked, are hard to contain. But here's the twist. Elena didn't panic. She listened and asked follow-up questions and guided the team to turn everything around. So, yes, some questions do open a can of worms. But if you ask with care, they can also uncover what really needs fixing. So the next time you're about to ask a tough question, ask yourself, am I ready to handle what might come wriggling out? Ooh. All right, in our next episode, have you ever started talking and realized that your thoughts weren't clear? Next episode, we'll show you how to organize your ideas before you speak so your English sounds smoother and smarter and more confident. Whether you're preparing for a meeting or just answering a question on the spot, you will want to catch this one. And that is a wrap for today's show. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you picked up some practical ways to ask better questions, and that you lead to and that they lead to a that they lead you to stronger conversations. And now it's your turn. If you've got a favorite go-to question or a moment when a great question changed everything, drop it in the chat, and I'd love to hear about it. And I'll stick around now for a few minutes to answer any questions live. And I think, I see we've got one question right here. Someone doesn't give much connection after I ask that person a question. How do I talk to her? So this is a common question. If you are trying to connect with someone and they're just not opening up, there's multiple reasons why they might do that. It could be because they're nervous. Maybe they feel nervous about their English, or maybe they feel embarrassed about the topic. So there are some questions that you're not going to get good answers to, and that's okay. If you ask a question that's maybe too personal, they may not want to answer you, and that will cut the connection. But you don't have to stop with the connection. Just change your question and use open-ended questions. Yeah, you got that right there, Gabriella. An open-ended question. Usually open-ended questions start with things like what or how, or like, what do you think about this? Or how do you do this? Or how long have you been doing this? How does that make you feel? That's a good one to get those empathy type questions. So if you have someone who just isn't really responding, sometimes if you just change the question, you'll get a better answer. And definitely avoid using closed-ended questions. Yes or no. Sometimes I call them single answer questions. Things like, what time is the meeting? Or when are we getting together? That's a single answer question. It'll give a good time. Just the time of day or something. So, excuse me a second. I'm going to drink my coffee. Okay. All right. I hope that answered your question, Gabriella. I have to go and get ready for my next class. So if you're interested in classes, you can also check me out on allaboutenglishmastery.com. And I'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.